She was dating his brother, until his mafia boss forced her to break up and choose him. Buddy, before we begin, please like, share, comment, and subscribe because this family we're building here, it means everything to me. Your support keeps this channel alive. It keeps these stories flowing, and it reminds me every single day that we're growing together. So show some love, drop a comment, let me know you're here, because you're not just watching, you are part of this story with me. Now let's dive in. Camilla Laura wasn't the kind of girl anyone looked at twice. She lived a quiet, tired life, working long double shifts in a small diner, wiping tables until her fingers hurt, forcing smiles even when her heart was breaking, and running home every night to care for her sick mother who depended on her for everything. She was soft-spoken but sharp-minded, the kind of girl who noticed every detail, every tone, every look. And maybe that's why she noticed Roberto Pietroro, even before he ever spoke to her. Roberto came to the diner almost every evening, always sitting in the same booth, always giving her the same warm smile. Gentle, respectful, safe. He made her feel seen in a world where she blended into the background. His kindness felt like sunlight after a long storm. She didn't know much about him, only that he had money, manners, and a sadness in his eyes he hid behind jokes. She liked him. She trusted him. Until the night, everything changed. Roberto asked her to come with him to a small, private dinner. He said he wanted her to meet his family. Her heart raced the whole drive. She was nervous, excited, unsure. She thought she was walking into something sweet, something pure, something romantic. But instead, she walked straight into danger. The moment she stepped inside the dim, quiet room, her breath caught. Sitting at the head of the table was Vincenzo Pietroro, the mafia boss, the older brother, the man people whispered about in fear. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He didn't even blink. He just watched her with cold, sharp eyes that made her feel like he could see her thoughts, her fears, her secrets. His presence didn't just fill the room. It controlled it. Roberto introduced them, but Vincenzo barely nodded. His silence was heavier than any greeting. And then he said it, low, quiet, and cold. I need to speak with her alone. Camilla's heart jumped. Roberto froze. But nobody, not even Roberto, argued with Vincenzo. So Camilla followed the mafia boss into a private hallway, her hands shaking, her breath stuck in her chest. For a long moment, he just stared at her, studying her, reading her, judging her. And then, with a voice so calm it terrified her, he said 3 words that shattered everything she thought she knew. You're leaving him. No threat. No reason. No raised voice. Just power. Pure, unshakable authority, the kind only a mafia boss could hold. In that moment, Camilla realized something she never expected. She wasn't just meeting Roberto's family. She had stepped into a world where her choices no longer belonged to her. And before Camilla could even gather her thoughts, Vincenzo stepped closer. Not touching her, not threatening her, just looking at her with those cold eyes that felt like they were peeling back every layer of her life. And then in a voice low enough to make her chest tighten, he told her that he knew everything about her. Things she never shared with Roberto. Things she never shared with anyone. Her mother's medical bills piling up on the table, her late-night shifts just to afford basic medication, the way she barely slept, the way she carried her whole world on tired shoulders. And he said it so simply, like he was reading a report, not her pain. Your relationship with Roberto puts him in danger. You are the complication. Camilla felt her heart drop, because he wasn't guessing. He knew, and he wasn't judging her life. He was using it, and before she could defend herself, he laid out the deal in the same cold tone that made her feel trapped in her own body. She could break Roberto's heart tonight, or she could keep dating him and watch him suffer consequences she would never be able to stop. And then he added the final blow. He would pay her mother's medical bills, not because he cared, but because it gave her no way out, and the silence after his words was heavier than any threat he could have made. And that night, With shaking hands and a heart that felt like it was tearing apart, Camilla met Roberto behind the diner, his smile soft, his eyes warm, waiting to hold her, waiting to love her, and she forced herself to tell him it was over. No explanation, no reason he could accept, just a quiet break that crushed him instantly. And he kept asking what he did wrong, why she was pushing him away, why she wouldn't look at him. But she couldn't tell him the truth, she couldn't tell him his own. Brother had already rewritten her future, and as Roberto stood there confused and heartbroken, Camilla walked away knowing he would never see her the same again, and knowing Vincenzo had won. And from that night on, Camilla's life stopped belonging to her, because the very next evening Vincenzo made it clear she wasn't just someone he controlled in private. He wanted the whole world to see it. He brought her to a high-level mafia gathering, a place filled with powerful men in dark suits, sharp eyes, and colder hearts. And he didn't hold her hand or stand close like a date. He simply walked with her at his side, as if she was a deliberate choice, a statement, a shift in the hierarchy itself, and everyone noticed. Conversations paused. Eyes followed. Whispers spread like wildfire, because the boss never brought anyone, never claimed anyone, and now Camilla stood where no ordinary girl should ever stand. From that moment, she wasn't just a waitress anymore. She became something else, something more dangerous. Vincenzo introduced her as his assistant, but in reality, she became the quiet mind behind him, the one who read the room faster than anyone, the one who noticed who was lying, who was angry, who was afraid, and she solved problems before they reached him. She softened tension with a single calm answer. She helped him navigate political arguments without raising his voice. And her intelligence began to impress him in ways he never expected. But while Vincenzo watched her with silent approval, someone else saw her too, Roberto. He spotted her across the hall, standing beside his older brother, the brother who was never supposed to want what he had. And in that moment Roberto finally understood that Vincenzo didn't remove her to protect him. He removed her because he wanted her. That realization shattered him. The family felt it. The air shifted. A quiet rivalry began to rise between the brothers. Not loud, not violent, just a cold, heavy tension that seeped into every room they entered together, and Camilla, standing between them without meaning to, felt the pressure building, knowing this was only the beginning. And as the days passed, Camilla finally understood the true weight of the world she had stepped into, because everywhere Vincenzo went, silence followed. Men who were loud and confident just minutes before lowered their voices the second he entered, and decisions that normally required entire meetings bent instantly the moment he spoke, not because he shouted, but because his presence alone demanded obedience. And she watched how he protected his family without ever showing emotion, how he made ruthless choices with a calm face, how the entire organization moved around him like he was the center of gravity. And the more she saw, the more Vincenzo pulled her into private moments, small meetings, quiet halls, locked offices, calling her in with nothing more than a look, forcing them into spaces where she couldn't escape his attention. And in those silent conversations, he spoke in fragments, revealing bits of himself he never shared with anyone else, pieces of loneliness, responsibility, and burdens he never voiced. And she began to see the humanity he hid behind all that coldness, the pain he carried quietly, the weight he had worn alone for years. And then came the night everything shifted. It was late, the building empty, the tension thick between them as he stood in front of her with an expression she couldn't read, and with a calmness that cut straight through her. He said the words that broke the balance of everything she thought she knew. If you stay with Roberto, you'll fear me every time I look at you. If you choose me, the fear ends. No threat, no anger, just pure power, pure truth. And Camilla knew in that moment that he wasn't giving her an option. He was showing her the reality of the world she was trapped in, and the turning point that would decide everything that came next. And those words from Vincenzo didn't just shake Camilla. They rippled through the family until they reached Roberto. And that was when everything began to crack, because Roberto finally gathered the courage to confront his brother, standing in front of Vincenzo with pain in his voice, demanding answers, demanding the truth, demanding to know why the woman he cared for had suddenly turned into a silent shadow at Vincenzo's side. And for a moment Camilla hoped Vincenzo would soften, would explain, would give Roberto something to hold on to. But he didn't. He answered with the same cold precision that broke people without ever raising his voice, telling Roberto that Camilla was no longer his concern, that she was needed elsewhere, that Roberto should focus on his duties and not on things that didn't belong to him. And those words hit harder than any punch, leaving Roberto shattered and walking away with a look that stayed with Camilla long after he left the room. And that was when Camilla learned the truth she was never supposed to hear. The family alliances were fragile, held together by fear and respect, and her presence, her connection to both brothers, had shifted the balance in ways she didn't understand, causing whispers of favoritism, tension between ranks, and quiet questions about why the boss suddenly had a waitress standing beside him like she belonged there. And without meaning to, she had become the spark inside a world built on control. And with pressure rising on every side, Camilla realized she was running out of time to decide who she truly was in this world, because she could stay beside Roberto, soft and fragile, constantly afraid of the storm around them, or she could step toward Vincenzo, the man who was cold, dangerous, and unshakable, but the only one powerful enough to keep her alive inside this world. And when she finally made her choice, she didn't choose love. She chose survival. And the moment Camilla chose survival over love, everything inside her began to shift, because stepping toward Vincenzo meant stepping deeper into a world where every word, every look, every breath carried weight, and she quickly learned she couldn't survive by staying quiet anymore. She started reading political danger the way she once read diner customers, who was angry, who was lying, who was plotting something behind a calm face. And she used that awareness to stop small conflicts before they grew into something the family couldn't control. She helped settle arguments between members who were loyal to different brothers, finding the right words at the right moment so nobody lost their temper. And slowly, the people who had once ignored her began to respect her. They listened when she spoke. They moved when she warned them. They watched her walk into a room and fell silent, not because she was violent, but because being beside Vincenzo had changed something in her. She carried a new kind of presence, sharp, controlled, untouchable. And Vincenzo watched all of it with a cold satisfaction, observing the way her posture straightened, the way her eyes sharpened, the way she held her ground in rooms where she once would have folded, and he liked it. He liked the version of her that belonged to his world. But while she rose, Roberto fell. Her choice broke something inside him, something he couldn't hide from the family, and his pain spread like a quiet fracture through the organization. People whispered in hallways, wondering how the boss and his younger brother could ever stand united again when one woman sat between them like a fault line. Some members took sides, others stayed afraid, but everyone knew the truth. Camilla Laura was no longer just a complication. She had become the dividing line in a family that was starting to tear itself apart. And when the tension inside the family reached a point where no one could pretend anymore, Vincenzo finally called Camilla into a quiet, empty room, the kind of room where truth had nowhere to hide, and he stood there waiting for her with that cold, unreadable expression he always wore when everything was about to change, and in a voice low enough to silence her thoughts, he said, "You know what you are choosing. No anger, no judgment. Just a reminder that the path in front of her had only one end." And Camilla, with her heart heavy and her hands trembling, still lifted her chin and whispered, "I know," because by now she understood that survival came with a price, and she was already paying it. And in that single moment, she walked toward Vincenzo, quietly, steadily, fully, and the distance she created behind her was enough to cut Roberto out of her life completely. And the aftermath hit harder than anyone expected, because Roberto didn't just lose the girl he cared about. He lost the last piece of trust he had in his brother, a trust that would never return, no matter how many years passed. Camilla, on the other hand, lost the innocence she had carried from her small, quiet life, because once she stepped into Vincenzo's shadow, she could never go back to who she used to be. The family itself felt the shift, losing the fragile unity that had held it together, because every member now saw the invisible crack running right down the middle, created by a choice that could never be undone. And in the end, Vincenzo got exactly what he wanted, Camilla by his side. But it came at a cost even he could not escape, because he gained her and lost his brother emotionally forever. And from that moment forward, a different kind of connection took shape between them, not warm, not gentle, not the kind of romance people dream about, but something colder, quieter, heavier, a bond built on survival, power, and silent understanding. Vincenzo changed only with her, but even his softness was sharp, controlled, the kind that didn't heal anything but made her feel protected in ways she didn't know she needed. Camilla moved like his shadow, always a step behind him, always watching, always aware, and he became her shield, stepping in front of threats before they reached her, shutting down danger without ever raising his voice. Together they walked through the world as a pair people feared to approach, a pair nobody could read, a pair that didn't need words to communicate. They didn't smile. They didn't laugh. They just existed side by side, cold and dangerous, each one giving the other something the world couldn't take away. And when the dust finally settled, when the whispers slowed and the family learned to function around the fracture, Camilla understood a truth she could never escape again. She had chosen protection over love, power over peace, survival over happiness, and even though Vincenzo stood beside her, the warmth she once knew with Roberto was gone forever. Nothing healed. Nothing resolved. The pain remained. The distance remained. The consequences remained. But the choice she made, the one that tied her life to the Mafia boss who claimed her future, was final, and she would carry it until the very end. And before you go, buddy, let me just say this from my heart. You being here means more than you know. Thank you for watching, for feeling this story with me, for staying till the end. You're not just a viewer. You're part of this family we're building together, and I'm truly grateful for you. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it keeps these stories coming every single day. Your support is the reason this family is getting bigger and stronger. I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. What part touched you the most? Which character surprised you? And do you want more cold Mafia stories like this? Talk to me. Your voice matters here. I love you. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you in the next story. Until then, stay safe, stay amazing, and remember, this family isn't complete without you.